Now, just a couple of weeks back, I drove Mercedes' GL63 AMG and I was completely bowled over by it. It was just so unapologetic about its XL-sized proportions, its raw performance and its brash nature. It just felt so refreshing in today's politically correct world. And Mercedes has got more of the excitement on offer for us now with another big SUV with lots of performance. This is the ML63 AMG. What makes it different? Let's find out. Just like the GL class, the ML is a big and towering SUV. But thankfully, it isn't as big and it doesn't tower as much. From nose to tail, it's shorter than the GL by 33 centimeters. It is also narrower by 4 centimeters and it sits lower to the ground by 8 centimeters. Along with all of that, the weight is also lower by 235 kilograms. All of that is great news for when you want to hit the road. Sure, the ML is smaller and lighter than the GL, but the horsepower figures are the same. You have a full 550 bhp on tap. And the twin-turbo V8's 77.2 kilograms of torque, which is enough to uproot a healthy tree. As is often the case with AMGs, is never, ever out of reach. And as is often the case with AMGs, this enormous ability is never, ever out of reach. Now the spread of power and torque is still just so impressive, with responsiveness coming in a huge wave from under 2000 RPM and it'll rev cleanly past 6000. Such are the reserves of power and torque that at a steady 200 kilometers an hour, this Merc will feel like it is just strolling around in the park. When pushed hard, the go fast juice just rushes through the traditional 7-speed gearbox and out to the 20-inch wheels at all 4 corners. This road bias system gives the ML additional grip, letting it thunder to 100 kilometers an hour from standstill in 5.1 seconds. 160 is another 5 seconds away, and 200 kilometers an hour comes up in 17.3 seconds. The only thing that lets down this drivetrain is the gearbox, which feels a bit sloppy when you're really in the mood to drive hard. However, in sport mode, the gearbox holds on to a ratio longer, giving you better responsiveness when you need it. Manual mode gives you complete control on the gearbox and won't shift up even if you hit the red line. The theatre of AMG is not just in the way the car performs but also the way it sounds, and in the ML, it's as pure and as brilliant as ever. There's a bit of thunder in the override, a threat in its burble, and the volume button is always stuck at full. Intoxicated by its tune, you will demand more from the ML. With an airmatic suspension that's been specifically tuned by AMG, with active anti-roll bars and tons of intelligent electronics, the ML will blur reality. What the ML does is mask speed beautifully. You don't even realize you're in high triple-digit speeds. It just builds pace so easily and holds it so nicely. Body control, quite simply, is fantastic for an SUV. The ML doesn't bob, lean or wallow. It just stays composed. The stiffest of the suspension settings keeps this 2.3-ton SUV incredibly tidy when hustled. You can bend the laws of physics, but you can't brake them. So you can enjoy the ML on a road that just snakes around, but when you brake and you corner hard, you're gonna feel the weight.
Which means, given the performance, it's very easy to overcook things. Luckily for you, the ESP is extremely watchful and chops the pace sharply if it senses trouble.
Now this is a high performance vehicle, and generally when you're driving a car that's as powerful as this, you have to be really careful on our roads because the surfaces are so bad, you've got to watch out for potholes. But here, no, you've got the ground clearance and the suspension is just so capable of soaking up most of the things that our roads have to throw at it.
In comfort mode, you'd be hard-pressed to complain about anything. Even in the sportier settings, the ride quality is always tolerable, which is a huge feat in itself. At standstill, the ML doesn't shout loudly about its impressive abilities. The AMG trim was offered by Mercedes in India for the first 100 cars. So, this ML won't stand out all that much. And on the inside, the cabin is ordinary for a Mercedes, which means the quality, equipment and safety levels are incredibly generous. But for an AMG, it feels a bit too much like Clark Kent, when you'd rather have Superman. Comfort is great and space is not something you will worry about in the front or in the second row. But there is no third row of seats in this ML.
So when you compare to the GL, by ditching the third row of seats, the ML is lighter, tighter, and it certainly feels crisper to drive, without missing out on any of the AMG madness that makes these cars so thrilling. Yes, you can still feel the heft of this giant SUV when you're cornering or braking, so it's not really on par with the sedans either, but nonetheless, the ML once again reinforces, if you want to experience the AMG madness properly in the Indian subcontinent, you have to go with the SUVs.